well periodically.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you.
And Morgan noticed that we had more comments from our little diagram on wearing face masks than we ever get from the actual graph of numbers themselves.
I know. That's okay. Whatever gets their attention, that's the important thing. So that's perfect. Well, we're still about 3 minutes out and I don't see Ann yet. So I'm going to wait for her.
I just wanted to remind you, Mayor, I've got to leave at an hour 15 to make it to a viewing tonight.
Yeah, we're, that's just a sad situation there, Joe. Particularly a guy that's so young and more importantly, to provide such great service to the broader community. Just a sad day.
Well, he spent his whole life rescuing and saving people from accidents and tragedies, and he succumbed to one of them himself.
Yeah.
Okay, Council, we're live on YouTube, just so you guys are aware too.
Thank you. And Morgan, what time do you show?
I showed 5:28.
Okay, we'll stay with the clock on the computer then. There's Ann.
That's not my dog.
It's ours.
Oh, good.
Okay, Council, let's go ahead and we'll get started. I did see Ann on, but she's dropped off. So hopefully she's reaching out to Matt, you or Morgan to get her back on. But I want to welcome you to the Royse City Council meeting, July 7th, 2020. We're starting at 5:30 p.m. I want to recognize we have Council Member Saxton. We have Council Member Burrell. We have Council Member Wilson. We have Council Member Paul. And I did see, but I don't see yet, Council Member Jackson. So we'll wait for her to come on and be able to join us in the conversation. We'd like, if we can, Council Member Paul, would you mind leading us in a moment of silence? And since you got the big flag in the back, lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd be happy to. If you'll please join me in a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. I think if I stand up, my flag should stay there, so I'll step out of the way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Still looking for Ann to pop in. I don't see her. We'll go ahead and address the consent items. There she is. Ann, can you hear me? You need to go off mute.
I could hear you, I could
Okay.
see you, but I couldn't, anyway, I'm good now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Council, we have scheduled 3 consent items, but only 1 minute meetings was provided with the packet. We're still waiting for the other 2. So I'd like to then propose that we table the May 19th and the June 16th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes, only from the standpoint that we have not received them yet, and table those, but we'll go ahead and approve then the June 2nd, 2020 Roy City Council meeting minutes. Do you have comments on those?
Yes, there are just a few name typo type things that need to be done. I've talked to Morgan and I will get my copies of those. I think, Mayor, you noticed at least the first one. There's a few throughout it. But other than that, I feel good about it.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Anybody else have any comments on those? Okay, hearing none then, do I have an approval then to approve the consent items to include then just the June 2nd, 2020 Roy City Council's meeting minutes?
I'd make that motion with the amendments as suggested by the mayor, name changes.
Okay, Councilmember Burrell, thank you for the, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Councilmember Diane, appreciate you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a series of action items we need to walk through. There's a bunch of ordinance and resolutions. So we'll start and begin for consideration of ordinance 20-6, which is amending the Roy City Noise Control Ordinance by adding section 4-4-3-.5 to prohibit engine braking on Utah State Roads SR 97 from 1900 West to 4300 West, and except for the overpass on SR 108 from Hinkley Drive to 3500 West. Matt, do you want to open the conversation and then we'll have some discussion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and City Council, up for consideration is ordinance 20-6. Not necessarily for you, Council, but just for the general public. I want to give the Reader Digest version of what this is and why this came about. So a while ago, there were some complaints about engine brakes or J brakes along some state roads. In order to enforce J brake regulations on state roads, we have to adopt a resolution through City Council that we will enforce it, and then UDOT will put up a sign that would restrict these engine brakes. It was discussed in a previous City Council meeting, and it was suggested that we could possibly allow muffled J brakes. After the discussion, it was shortly tabled. The ordinance was shortly tabled. Reached out to UDOT and they said it's black or white. We can enforce it or not enforce J brakes, period. And so we just bring this back up for discussion. It was a tabled item from, I believe, in February. So I just leave it up to you, Council, on how we want to proceed with this.
Thank you, Matt. Comments?
I appreciate the information from Councilwoman Wilson. She gave us some breakdowns of the numbers and collected some data. And it appears to me that it is seldom an issue. Is that correct, Councilmember Wilson?
From my observation and from collecting it, there were so many other vehicles that had much louder decibel ratings, and so infrequent for the J brakes, for the electric brakes, that I'm sure that although when you hear them, it may be concerning compared to everything else, I don't believe that it really presents an issue after collecting the data and spending time at different locations that would be included in this ordinance amendment.
Okay,
I thought about it as well and thought, depending on what the increase in traffic and increase in particularly commercial vehicle travel that may look like in the future, then we may want to revisit it in the future if we choose not to adopt it at this time. But at this time, it didn't seem to be as egregious as it seemed. Is that correct, Councilmember Wilson?
From my experience, that's correct. And there were two issues we mentioned previously that for traffic backup, which is one of the biggest problems down those roads, the vehicles that would be using those would have to go so slow to be able to avoid the overuse of their regular brakes, that would cause a traffic issue as well as possibly a safety issue. And that's why they are used. And then the other issue is that most of the new trucks now are muffled, and so they're becoming fewer and fewer in the now and then in the future. So if the future it brings a problem, that certainly we could look at it, but the future looks like the problems would be less frequent and not more frequent at this point.
My observation is 5600 has a pretty slow traffic flow right now as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
other input, council?
I just agree with what Diane and Jan said, that after her comparing all those different cars and vehicles, that we should just let it be for now.
Okay, let me, that's probably segue, Councilmember Jackson. According to the current ordinance on noise, let me just make sure we all understand what that reads. It says noise for vehicles. It shall be unlawful for any person to operate a motor vehicle, including but not limited to snowmobiles, mini bikes, and other self-propelled vehicles within the city that shall create a noise measuring distance at least 25 feet away where that noise exceeds 90 decibels. That's what the ordinance says today. I believe the intent of this particular ordinance was to amend that and basically limit the Jake break as being that and posting a sign at the locations outlined in this ordinance. Are you okay then with the ordinance as written today? That's what is in today, 90 decibels. Diane, did any of your readings when you were standing off the road listening, was any of your readings over 90?
Yes, there were
Yeah.
cars revving engines. And then there was a Corvette that was modified that was up to 99. That was the loudest. And then most of them were less than 90, even the modified small cars, the motorcycles, and that. So there were a few readings above 90, but most of them were not.
Okay. Okay.
In-
What,
Including the large trucks, is that correct?
That's correct. Most of the large trucks, like a cement truck, side pump truck, was reading around 80. Some of the modified pickup trucks were 86 to 88. Yeah, there's like a dump. Some of the dump trucks were even 78 to 80. The city bus was 74.
okay. Well, obviously, not all of us have seen the data, Diane. Some of it looks like has seen it. If you would, then would you like, for the public record, it may have a bearing in terms of how this is going to be defined. Just forward that information to me. I'll make sure it's part of the public record. And then based on that, we're going to take a voted decision here on what to do with this particular ordinance. Now, let me
Okay.
just,
I texted it to the city council, the mayor, the police chief, and Matt. And I can also forward this as an email if you prefer as well.
yeah, I think an email, then we'll attach it to the packet and we'll have that as a
All right.
part of the public record.
Sounds great.
I
Okay,
think, monitoring that and ensuring compliance could put an additional task on an already overtasked police force.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I
good comment.
just want that in the record.
Okay, council, let me just, let me make that as a segue. I'm gonna read a motion to approve this because the ordinance presented to us. If I do not hear, after I ask for a motion to approve, any request to approve, then I'm going to make the assumption that the council has elected not to offer a motion to approve, and it will die based on lack of motion. Andy, are you okay with that approach?
Yes.
Okay,
Can
any
you
other
hear me now,
comments?
Mayor?
Any other comments relative to ordinance 20-6? Okay, hearing none then, do I have a motion then to approve ordinance 20-6, amending the Roy City Noise Control Ordinance? I'll repeat that one last time. Do I have a motion then to approve ordinance 20-6, amending the Roy City Noise Control Ordinance? Okay, hearing none, then that ordinance will fail as a part of not receiving a motion to approve. Andy, you okay with that?
I am. That's how it works, Mayor.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to resolution 20-18. It says a resolution, Roy City Council ratifying the July 25th, 2015 interlocal cooperative agreement and mutual aid and fire emergency service with Hill Air Force Base and amending it to include automatic aid service. Craig, I think you're talking that. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Thank you. First off, I apologize that we had to table this one, but it required making sure we were on the right legal ground. So I worked with Mr. Blackburn to get a good read on this. So as it is right now, we do have that current mutual aid agreement, and we'd like to, based off of the last memo and update we had from Hill Air Force Base in May of this year, convert that to a automatic aid agreement. And that benefits basically both agencies and be able to meet the time requirements and also without delay that a mutual aid would do. So recommending that we approve this resolution as written.
Great, thank you. Council, do you have any comments on this particular resolution?
I make a motion, we approve the resolution 20-18.
I'll second it.
Okay, Joe Paul basically had a motion to approve. Jan, or was it Ann?
Jan.
Seconded. Okay, this is roll call vote. Morgan?
Sorry, guys. Councilmember Jackson,
I,
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Do I get a vote?
Did I not say your name already?
Nope.
No.
Sorry, I checked your name.
based-
I thought
but
it in my
based on-
head.
Based on the fact I made the motion, you would think I would vote for it.
I'm so sorry. Councilmember Paul.
Aye.
she
Motion
thought you left the building already.
started.
Okay, thank you.
You're just seeing a poster board of me.
Okay, now we have a discussion relative to resolution 20-22. On your packet, it shows 20-23. It's actually 20-22, approving adjustments to the fiscal year 2021 budget. I'm going to ask Camille just to kind of give us an introduction, and then I'm going to ask the council to go into a public hearing. So Camille, would you like to start off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. It's great to be with you to present this resolution 20-22 for your consideration to amend the fiscal year 2021 budget. It's proposed that this resolution will increase the previously approved fiscal year 2021 budget by $1,153,848 to account for the CARES Act funding received by the city. As we discussed in last week's special council meeting, CARES Act funding can only be used for expenditures that are necessary incurred due to the public health emergency with COVID-19. City administration met together to prioritize the CARES Act funding, and this resolution is a collaborative effort, and if approved, will fully fund each department's Phase 1 requests. The resolution includes an increase to the grant revenue received by the city and the following increases to expenditures. The Police Department CARES Act expenses of $68 will cover a portable ozone machine. The Fire Department CARES Act expenditures of $59,817 will cover expenses related to an air purifying system, filters at Fire Station 31 and 32, touchless plumbing upgrades, portable air purifiers, emergency patient relief covers, radios, and personal protective equipment. Increases to the Public Works Department of $3,000 to cover CARES Act expenses related to crowd barriers. Increases to the Parks, Recreation, and Recreation Complex CARES Act expenses of $52,500 will cover expenses related to face shields, crowd control fencing, touchless plumbing, locker room upgrades, and electrostatic disinfectants. And we will increase the transfer to Weber County for $1,038,463 to fund the amended interlocal agreement that you'll consider later in this meeting to partner with Weber County to administer the CARES Act budget on behalf of the businesses in Roy City. If the city receives additional funding related to Phase 2, we'll bring that forward in another budget opening, and we'll have recommendations for the expenditures related to the CARES Act in Phase 2 at that time. So we recommend you receive public comment and approve the adjustments in Resolution 20-22 as we've proposed.
Camille, thank you. Okay,
Thank
good
you.
rundown. Do I have a motion then to go into a public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, Diane, do I have a second?
Second it. I second it.
Ann? Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, we're now in a public hearing. Morgan, do we have anybody out there that would like to make comments on this particular budget adjustment?
The only person that I had that requested to speak during the public hearing was Mr. Kevin Homer.
Okay, I don't see Kevin. Oh, he's on. Kevin, do you would like to make comments?
Yes, I would, please.
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead.
I appreciate this public hearing on item number 3 about resolution 20-22. I actually don't have any comments for this one, but I do have comments for action item number 9. It does not have a public hearing attached to it, but I would ask that if you could consider adding that when you get to item number 9. Otherwise, I will make my comments on item number F, which is for public comments. The only problem with that is it's after we talk about action item number 9.
Yeah, no problem, Kevin. Okay.
Anyway, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, is there any other comments about this budget?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Then council, do I have a motion then to go out of public hearing?
So moved.
Jan,
I'll
thank you.
second it.
Who's second?
Diane?
Thank you, Diane. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, council comments on the proposed resolution.
I make a motion, we approve proposed resolution. Is it 2022?
2022.
I just think, as a comment, I think we're going to have to be very mindful that we're going to have to look at reviewing those budgets often in this year. So I think it will be more the norm than the exception that we have a review. So appreciate the work that Camille does on that to prepare us for those changes. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Great
Thank you for
comment.
keeping us
Thank
in
you,
line.
Jan. Okay, any other comments?
I make a motion, we approve resolution 20-22.
Seconded.
Okay, so I got Joe and we got Jan. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Aye.
I got all of you this time, right?
Yeah.
You did.
You did.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Appreciate that vote. Okay, we have consideration of resolution 20-24, approving a fee for the provision of the Roy City Administration records. Andy, I believe you're going to talk this one. Up, mute. You're on mute, Andy. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. State law allows us to charge a fee for records requests. All of our departments by resolution have different fees, but we don't have one for the administrative records. So we looked at that. We're charging a fee of $25 for records, and that's to review, search, and prepare those records. It's consistent too with what some other cities have proposed. So we wanted to have that. We also wanted to leave that open because under grandma, you can not charge a fee under certain circumstances, and you can also charge a greater fee under certain circumstances. So if we have to change the format of that record on a request, we can actually charge an additional charge. Also, if it's going to exceed $50, we can give an estimate to the person who's made the request and tell them that it's going to cost a certain amount, and then we don't have to do anything until they say, okay, go forward, we'll pay for it. So wanted to make sure we had all that covered. So that's what you have before you. And we ask that you approve resolution 20-24.
Okay, council comments.
I had a comment in regards to that. I think that that's a very appropriate thing to do, but I've heard of some people maybe doing a records request for something very, very simple. And so I don't know that it needs to be part of the resolution, but maybe just at the bottom of the application form on the website or wherever it is, maybe we could just write something like, for simple questions, call. And that would save people maybe a $25 fee. That was a simple question that could be answered easily. And I think that just facilitates and continues the team effort that our city feels from our staff. I believe that we have a good relationship and rapport with them, and that would continue it. And the other thing I understand is that a lot of these extensive requests aren't from our citizens anyway, they're from outside, but and so certainly very appropriate. But that's something I would just like to ask as part of the application, just a small note that says that.
Diane, I have a question for you. If they call in and they request a record and are you saying if we respond on the telephone and to give them an answer, we wouldn't charge anything at that point, but if we have to find the record, retrieve it, and send it to them, that's when we charge it. So, and that's for providing the record, not just a conversation.
Yes.
So would that need additional information in the resolution, Andy?
No, that wouldn't be anything we'd put in a resolution.
The application also does, Diane, at the very bottom, it does have a request to have the fee waived. So if it is a small, simple request, I actually am the one that does all of the grandma or the record requests that we get. Most of the time, if it is something really very small, I can just give them a call, and I have done that in the past. Or they can request to have the fee waived if it's something, there's just circumstances that people would request that. But for a really small request or record, the fee does is pretty helpful.
Okay,
that seems like that would be consistent and protect us legally. Is that correct, Andy?
Yes.
If we are not just willy-nilly making that decision, but rather, there'd be one person and there is specific reasons why it is waived.
Yeah, there's reasons that are specified under state law where you can waive the fee.
Okay, council, other comments? You feel comfortable to be able to make a decision on this? Okay,
Yes.
then council, do I have a motion then to approve resolution 20-24, approving a fee for the provision of Roy City administrative records?
So
Oh
moved.
my God. Okay,
Jan? Okay, thank you, Jan. Do I have a second? Who? Ann?
And
Sam.
Well, thank you, Ann.
And Jan's
Okay.
my second.
Perfect.
That's-
This is a roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
I'm thinking. Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, council. Appreciate that. Now we have consider resolution 20-25, approving ambulance transportation charges. Greg, I think you're talking this one. Thank you.
I am here. Yes, Mayor and Council, thanks again for hearing me out here. This resolution is set for the rate changes and stuff that are provided under administrative code and the rules thereof. This specific code and rule, it comes out of Utah Code Title 2688-403, and then further defined in Administrative Rule R 4268-200. And that's allowable rates for that we can charge as an ambulance provider. These charges are only in the event that we actually transport somebody. Other services that we provide or where a patient is not transported, we cannot charge the rates, as you know. So these rates are set through Utah Code and through this administrative rule. And the increases went up a little bit, probably more so, but these also have a trickle down effect, which I'll probably approach you in a couple months. And that's the PMA and the rescue fees that we'll talk about later. But these rules here that set out in the rates effective July 1st are, with your approval and resolution, we'll actually press with the charges thereof as directed on this administrative rule. So my recommendation is to approve the resolution.
Okay. Council comments, discussion?
I have a question in regards to are some of these ever waived or decreased due to a hardship on people or those that maybe don't have insurance or something like that?
Yes, they are. You know, when it goes out to our collection company, First Professional, or even collections in general, and goes through legal processes. So an accident comes through, things like that. Sometimes they just can't cover all the charges that would go in there. And they'll present their case, whether it be individually through their attorney, and those rates can actually change based off of those presentations, and they often do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is probably a dumb question, but is it just a flat fee that you charge someone, or does it depend on how far you're transporting them, or?
It includes multiple things, because the equipment and supplies also come with the charge that is actually included in that. And there's a set fee that we can charge for, say we give them an IV fluid or administer certain type of medication. There's fees that we can charge, and it's also set by those rates that part of this rule as well. So mileage, once they get in the ambulance, it's so much per mile, which is the rate that it's increasing to is $36.10 a mile. So a transport to Ogden Regional or McKay would be that much per mile from where we picked them up to the actual hospital or emergency room that we take them to.
Good comments. Anything else? Any other comments, discussion items? Okay, hearing none. Then do I have a motion then to approve resolution 20-25, approving ambulance transportation charges?
I'll move to approve resolution 20-25.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Brian, thank you for the second. Okay, this is a roll call vote. Morgan,
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
You're on mute. Joe.
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
aye,
Motion
Thank you.
carries.
thank you. Okay, consideration of resolution 20-26, approving a contract for post-construction company for a 6,000 south sidewalk curb and gutter project. Brandon, I believe you're talking this one. Go ahead, Brandon.
Thanks for having me tonight. So yeah, like you said, I'm here for consideration of resolution 20-26, approving post-con construction company for 6,000 south sidewalk curb and gutter project. We had 3 companies bid this. We had Post Construction, Advanced Paving, and Leon Polson Construction. Post came in the lowest at $86,109.50. Advanced was $94,862, and Leon Polson was $143,380.50. So we're fairly confident with Post Construction. We're a reputable company, so we're just hoping you guys will approve this so we can move forward with this project.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Council comments, questions?
So where does that start and where does it end?
That was my question too, Ann. Go ahead, Brandon.
So it's over there on 6,000. It starts just on the west side of 2700 West, and it will tie into our existing curb and gutter there on the north side, right there by the walking trail. And then
Go to 3,500?
it goes
or where?
about 2750. So it goes from 2700 West to about 2750 South. And that's on the north and south side of the road.
North and south, okay.
Wow, cement's gone up in price.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
I make a
Any-
motion, we approve the resolution.
okay. I have a motion on 20-26 from Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, this is a roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Saxton,
aye,
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
aye.
There you go. Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is consideration resolution 20-27, approving a contract with the Post Construction Company for the 5,500 South Sidewalk Curb and Gutter Project. Brandon?
All right. So again, here for consideration of resolution 20-27. Again, Post Construction came in lowest. They were at $108,908.50. Paving came in at $129,059. And Leon Polson came in at $154,751. And yeah, so same thing. We're confident with Post, and hopefully we can improve this and move forward with this project. The one thing I will add is we do have a grant from the state of Utah for the Safe Sidewalk Grant, and they're going to contribute $85,000 towards this project. So.
Great.
Brandon, can I ask where Post Construction is based?
Yeah, they're based out of here in Ogden, right off 12th Street, I believe, right there, 1900.
Brandon, before Ann asks, could you help us understand where that sidewalk curb and gutter is actually going to start on 5,500 South?
Yep. So it starts right down there at the Sunridge Assisted Living on the south side of the 5,600 there, and it will meet up with our other existing sidewalk that's just to the west there of it. So it's about 3675 west to 3750 south on 5,600 on the south side of the road.
I have a question. Should the resolution include that of where we're approving a contract, but should it state where it's being done?
It gives sufficient notice of where it's going to be at. It doesn't have to specifically say the entire thing. And even in the contract, the title of the contract, it doesn't say that.
It may not be a bad idea, Brandon, because that does come up quite often in these meetings. And since it's a high dollar issue, the council does approve. It might be good just to indicate in your discussion where that, particularly in these cases, where that's going to start and where it's end, because we have a genuine interest in that. That's going to be different on resolution 20-28, which you're going to be talking about here coming in a minute, but definitely on those two projects where you have those situations like that, I would just plan on telling them directly where it's going to happen, and I think that'll satisfy that need.
So, Mayor, if you'd like in the future that's put on the resolution, that's something that can be done. It's not necessary to do that because the public, if you live on 5500 or you travel down 5500 and you see something with 5500, you can attend the meeting or listen to the meeting or call and ask, hey, does this affect my property? So it's sufficient legal notice. And we don't want our notices to be too long, but if we can specify that, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Yeah, great comment, Andy.
I just think it would be beneficial because I get asked that question a lot. Where is this at, or what does this pertain to?
And when are they starting this? And do they have a timeline, or can they drag it out as long as they want? Or is there a timeline and an ending, and then they get fined if they're not done by a certain time?
Yes, so we'll put stipulations in the contract, and especially where they're working on a state road, the state has pretty heavy regulations on how long they can be out there and stuff. So yeah, there will definitely be a timeline for them.
So are they starting it like pretty soon then? As soon as this is
Oh
approved?
yeah, I mean, once you guys approve it and we get the contract, we'll be put into their book and they'll notify us. But yeah, so they're just still waiting back to make sure that it's approved before they can pencil us in.
Well, that I think is a great idea, especially with all the kids that don't have a sidewalk to walk in, and then they walk, they'll be more protected. So I think it's about time we did this on 6,000 and 5,500.
Yeah, there's a couple of more of that streets that need that as well. And I know there's grants been applied for and we got approved. We're just waiting for the money to come through, but good point. Go ahead, Diane, sorry.
Just a technicality. I spoke with Andy about this, but I believe this is where I should bring it up. On page 2 of that contract, it says total of all unit prices, and then it's written out like you would in a checkbook, but then the number says $0. And so we'll just want to make sure that that gets changed to the 108,908.50. And then I think, Andy, you were going to just double check on that 5%. Or do we need to do anything different on
Diane.
that 5% on page 3?
No, I talked to Morgan, and Morgan contacted the people who prepare over at Wasatch Civil, and they've made those corrections.
So that should read 1%?
And it should read 5%, yes. I don't know why that's different from the others, but that's what they wanted that to be.
It is 5%. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good catch. Perfect, Diane. Okay, council, any other comments, questions about resolution 20-27? Okay, hearing none then, do I have a motion to approve then resolution 20-27, approving the contract with Post Construction Company for the 5500 South sidewalk curb and gutter project?
So moved.
Okay,
And I'll
Brian
second it.
and Diane,
We'll second.
thank you. Morgan, this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, we have one more from Brandon. We have consideration of resolution 20-28 approving a contract for Staker Parson Companies for 2020 street maintenance projects. We've done this just about every year that I'm aware of. But Brandon, maybe you can explain to the council what this one's all about.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, it's resolution 2028 with Staker Parsons. This is our street maintenance program where we pick various roads throughout the city that we feel the need that need to be either paved or chip sealed or to basically keep them in their top condition. So we put this bid out. We had 3 people bid it. We had Staker Parsons Company came in the lowest at $540,808. And Granite Construction Company came in at $565,912. And Advanced Paving and Construction came in at $599,016.
Wow.
So we've had a long running relationship with Staker Parsons. We've actually been doing this with them for 18 years now. So we're very confident that they'll do a great job for us. So we're hoping you guys approve this and we can move forward with this.
Hey, Brandon, thank you. Council comments, discussion.
Those beds were short. They're tight. And so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I know that they're real competitive. In fact, it's kind of fun to be in them bid openings because I know Granite really wants to get it, but Staker wants to keep our business, I guess. So yeah, it is tight.
I think the other thing we have to recognize on that, Brandon, is that Staker Parson has been very good to our community. That they've been very willing to support us in many of our activities. So we appreciate that relationship as well.
Yeah, I believe they give us a very good chunk of money for Roy Days. So yeah, they've been great.
Any other comments, questions, council?
So I guess you choose the roads that are in worse shape and then, or go around Roy, and then it's different every year, just for the upkeep.
Yeah, so every year we go and reevaluate the roads just because they kind of differ from year to year. But yeah, every year we go around and reevaluate. I mean, it would be great to have all the money in the world, but so we just kind of have to pick our ones out of the city.
Now, Brandon, could you give me the location of this project again?
Yeah, so we have several. I mean, so the chip seal projects, we have 4. Do you want me to?
No, just
I can send you an email.
Would you?
Yep.
Thank you. Send it to all of us, okay?
I will do.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yep.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, people do ask council members all the time, when you're going to clean up my road, and Public Works can do a good job in letting you know what's planned, and that helps the public know what's going to happen. So that's perfect, Brandon. Thank you. Okay, council, any other comments, discussion items? Okay, hearing none then, do I have a motion then to approve resolution 20-28, approving the contract with Staker Parsons Companies for 2020 street maintenance projects?
I'll move to approve resolution 2028.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
That was Ann.
Yes.
Thank you. This is a roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Consideration of ordinance 20. Now this is an ordinance 20-10, repealing and reenacting the Title I, Chapter 6, Section 5 of the Roy City Code by reorganizing and updating the meeting provision, included those relating to electronic meetings and city records. Also amending Title II, Chapter 1 by adding a new section 2-1-10 regarding the Planning Commission meetings. Andy, I believe you're introducing this. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mayor. Ever since COVID came along, we've had to change our meetings. And when the governor declared a state of emergency, he also, as part of that, said how we would handle our meetings. And that order is still in effect until August 20th. So we'll continue. That's how we're doing it now, and we'll continue doing it until that date. And who knows, it may get extended again too. But then there was House Bill 5002 that was passed that dealt with electronic meetings and how we would really conduct those in the future. So I've gone over that, dissected it, and wanted to make sure that we were, our code was updated to include those new changes. But I also thought while I was at it that we could make our current section that deals with meetings a lot more clear than it was before. And so I broke it down into, we have our regular meetings, then we have our special meetings, we have emergency meetings, and we have electronic meetings. And really any of those can be electronic. And I also didn't like how our notice was, it was kind of confusing. So with each type of meeting, I've listed what type of notice would be provided in there and how we have to go about that. So I reorganized it that way. And so if you have any questions, please let me know on that too. And I know that Mr. Homer, I believe, is there with some comments too, but I'll finish up and then maybe I can answer any questions he had. One thing that I wanted to tell you is with the electronic meetings, we'll continue to do those the way that we have in the past. So a council member, if they can't be there and they would like to attend, they call in, they're connected electronically, and they participate. So we have that. And there's special notice provisions in there, just where we'd like the council member, the code says anywhere up to 3 days, but I think as long as we know a day in advance, that's plenty good where we can connect and make that work. So we have the electronic meetings, how we've been doing them in the past. And during those meetings, we have an anchor location. So we need to be clear. The second part on this, the code deals with situations where we don't have an anchor location. And that's kind of what we're doing now. So in those circumstances, what we look at is the mayor makes a determination that we can't have a meeting that, well, let's see, I think the terminology, there's a significant risk of harm and risk of safety also to participants if they were to be there. So in that circumstance, we don't have an anchor location. We're all participating electronically. But with that, we have to provide a means, and which I mean by that is a way that the public can also view and participate. If we have a public hearing, then they've got to be able to have a way to communicate. So we have to set that up. And then the notice provision is a little different than the regular one there too. There's some additional requirements. So if you've had a chance to look at that, feel free to ask me any questions. I did want to cover something else at that time too. I was looking in our city records provision there, and I added another sentence to that, which also deals with being able to charge more money if it's expected the cost of providing the record is going to be more than $50, is that, again, we give them an estimate and they tell us if they want to pay for that, and then we go ahead and get those records. So that's included there. That helps things citywide on that basis. So, and again, then it's in our resolution too. So we've got in the ordinance, we have it in the resolution. I thought it would be a good idea, even though this wasn't addressed in the state code, but our planning commission, we're conducting those meetings the same way, and we should also have mention of that in our planning commission ordinance. So I've added that they need to comply with the Open and Public Meetings Act, and then the part about electronic meetings I've got included in there. So I have that it's not limited to but not limited to the requirements of public notice, open meetings, electronic meetings. So now we have that there too. So where the planning commission can do that once this order expires.
Okay, great rundown on that, Andy. Thank you. Okay, council, let's go ahead and we'll open up for public comments. Do I have a motion then to open up for public comment?
Mayor, we don't have this isn't a public hearing, so we don't need to do a motion. Well, I guess you could do a motion if you want to allow somebody to talk, but
right.
That's kind of your call.
Right. And that's, since the request came, I'm just asking the council to go ahead and let's have a motion to allow public input on this particular ordinance. Do I have a motion to allow that to happen?
I move for public comment.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ann. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, we're in a public comment, public hearing. Anybody? I think Kevin, you might have want to make a comment during this particular ordinance. So please go ahead and make comment.
Yes, sir. I appreciate very much that you would allow this public comment. On 1-6-5, subsection D1, my recommendation would be to change the language to say Royce City Council meetings shall be conducted electronically. And this is kind of a reiteration of something that I've mentioned to this body before. It's my opinion that the electronic meetings should become standard instead of optional. The advantages of having these electronic meetings every single time, I think is tremendous. You know, we have elected officials and city staff that if they are sick or if they're away on a trip or a vacation, they could still log in and have access to this. And the same thing would apply to the citizens as well. If someone is sick and we actually do have an anchor location, but they don't want to go in and, you know, get everybody sick, they could still log in, or if they're away and on vacation. So my estimation is having this be the norm instead of the exception would be preferred. So that's me. I'm a geek. I like the technology, and I think it serves us very, very well. The other thing I would talk about is also in the Planning Commission meetings, section 2-1-10. I would ask that the same thing be applied, that the electronic meetings be something that shall happen, not may happen. So there are my comments. I'd appreciate any feedback if you have that.
Hey, thank you for your input. Is there anybody else that'd like to make comments?
I actually agree with that, holding these, even if we're in person, having a portion of the meeting that's electronic for sick or afflicted or out of town or whatever. I've called into a couple of meetings in the past few years, and it hasn't been near as easy to call in as doing it over Zoom. So at least for council meeting, I would like to see that continue even once we get back in person.
Okay, any other public comments before we go out of public hearing? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion then to go out of public hearing?
I move to go out of public hearing.
Diane, thank you. Who's second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay, Brian, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, thank you. Okay, council, any other comments? We've heard some other conversations. Any other comments you'd like to add to this discussion?
I just have a question for Andy. Is that legal? I mean,
Well,
I know it was done unprecedented for the pandemic era, but what is the legality of always having it be available?
And Jan, I'm glad you brought that up because that is my concern there. What I've done is fashion it off of what state code says. So what I'd like to bring up too, all of our meetings are televised on YouTube. So the public can always watch through YouTube. And on every meeting, actually, we put in a notice on our agenda that allows it so that a council member could participate electronically. Isn't that correct, Morgan?
Sorry, I'm talking. Yes, that's accurate. They can always participate and watch on YouTube. It does open up an avenue for people to be able to offer comment if we continue to hold these meetings, or at least have the option of holding a meeting via Zoom if people are not allowed to be there. But they can always participate remotely with YouTube.
But I would be concerned if we said every meeting shall be a Zoom meeting. And I think that's kind of where we'd be going with it. But I think we're covering, and maybe I'm wrong, Kevin, but I think we're covering your concerns is that everybody would be able to watch. And with our practice too, and what we include on all of our agendas, if a council member can't attend, they usually tell us and they can call in.
I have a question. If we were going to add the electronic option for public comment from citizens, I guess you could combine all of these, right? You could possibly have your set location, you could have a council member in by telephone if necessary. And I mean, I guess there's a way to combine all of that if that ever came up, because it says may, right? It says may be conducted. So that still gives us the option to do that if we could work it out, right?
I think so, and I'm going again with state law, and I know they put a little time and consideration into that, whether that should be a shall, but I don't know if, I just don't know the ins and outs of that. If every meeting we start conducting it this way, or we'd say, okay, public, here's how you participate. You can Zoom and the rest of the council be there. I don't know. It's kind of like, I think what you're saying is we're saying every meeting shall be a Zoom meeting.
Oh, I think, no, I think maybe the best way to approach it would be is, I think there's going to be a time we have to basically go live. There is that personal contact and you have to have that interaction personal. But I think to the extent that you can you also at the same time run a Zoom meeting for those people who are unable to attend it, a live meeting? Can they call in? Can they voice a position in a Zoom setting? And I think that's kind of the debate or discussion, because like there could be, if the council's concept is we're going to be very transparent, then transparency could be defined as simply says, then allow any medium by which they can come into a live session and be able to ask questions and get answers. And today, I think the only way they can do that when we're in a live meeting is that we ask them to send in, okay, if they have something of some length or something, just send it into the council in a text form or in a Word form. I don't believe there is a call-in option for a resident to call into a city council meeting in a live session.
There isn't. I'm a little leery of going outside of what the governor has signed off on. So that's where I stand with that issue. I think we're opening things up more. That could always be explored, but right now with everything being so new, I'm a little leery of going beyond that. But
well, I remember when we had that Zoom meeting on that zoning on 2700, and it was so jammed, some people couldn't get through. So that's one issue I have, where if it's a heated discussion and it's not live, whenever we go back to being, live, there were some people that didn't get through, if you remember. And so that would be the only problem, I think, is if it was something up where everybody wanted to, talk about, and then they weren't able to, then that causes a problem like it did last time.
Okay, that's a good comment.
My question is, regardless of language, like if one of the council members says they can't be there, can a Zoom meeting be enacted versus trying to hold cell phones up to one another?
Oh, yeah, I don't think there'd be a problem with that.
Okay,
because
that's all I wanted.
Or otherwise, electronically, we could hook that council member up. Yeah, I don't think there'd be a problem with that at all.
That was my biggest concern, because trying to call in, as some of us have done in the past, is kind of painful. If one of us couldn't be there, could a Zoom be set up for that specific meeting?
I think that could be done with how this statute or how this ordinance is. Yes.
Correct.
I'm good then.
Yeah, I think to your point, Paul, that's Joe, that's exactly what I think for the council, you can have this interaction. I think we can accommodate that. I think the question is it something we want to pursue in terms of allowing the same thing for the general public? Either in these sessions, which we've got a system set up right now, along the governor has the executive order to allow it. But I think it's a post issue. When this is done and we're back to live sessions, do we want to also carry this same mechanism, this same technology into the public? And that really is something you're considering. And I think the comment from Kevin was more along the lines, by changing it, you shall do that, then it mandates that we will put in statute that we will do that. If you leave it may, then it's at the discretion, either at the mayor or the council or staff, to be able to define whether that's workable or not. So I think that's really where we are on that covers. But there's an argument here that says this: if you were in a live session and all of us were sitting back in our normal position, and we did allow the public who may be ill, who may be sick, who have a comment to voice in, you have to admit you can't get much more transparent and open than that. It's a little complex. It has a lot of technology, but surely people can voice an opinion from any distance and anywhere in terms of topics. The only question we have to ask here is, do we make it shall, which says you will do it, versus may, which basically says we can look at it if the opportunity does arrive. That's the comment on the table.
What I'm hearing though, Mayor, is that Andy has concerns about the legality of that. Is that correct, Andy? I mean,
I'm
without hearing
concerned with
from-
going outside of what the state legislature put together and the governor approved.
I think that maybe we wait until we hear those possibilities.
That would be my preferred road too.
And to your point, Jan, I think what we're seeing already is businesses are finding that they're getting some increased productivity by having their meetings like we're doing Zoom today. We're having a lot of work at home. So I think technology is moving around pretty quickly to the point where you almost could say a lot of people can stay home and do their job versus having to go to an office. And if that's the case, maybe what we'll find as a result of what we're experiencing over these few months, that using this technology in a normal capacity is not such a bad idea. We may not be there yet, but as your suggestion, the door's open. We're not mandated to do it, but let's watch this thing unfold and figure out whether or not it's something we want to do now.
I think we definitely keep listening for what the norm becomes.
Yeah. Okay. Other comments, questions, council, on resolution 20-10?
I just want to thank Andy for all of his work on this. There's a lot of information, a lot of detail, and I just can't imagine getting all of that coordinated to have such an excellent document prepared. So thank you very much, Andy, for all of your time.
Oh, thank you. And I should tell you, I just noticed one error in it here that we have in D1, we make reference to section 1, and that should really be section A. But what we did, we rechanged the numerals on everything in one of our drafts here. So we didn't pick that up, but we'll get that clerical change made.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Any other comments, questions on this? Okay, hearing none, then do I have a motion then to approve resolution 20-10 as written with the slight modification to clerical, repealing and enacting a Title I, Chapter 6, Section 5 of the Roy City Code?
So moved.
Diane, thank you. Do I have a second?
I have a point of clarification. Do we have to go out of public comments before we vote on it?
Oh.
This wasn't a public hearing, so
We just allowed public comments.
And we didn't, we made a motion to allow that, but we didn't make a motion to have a public hearing, so.
Okay, so I'll second the motion to approve the resolution or ordinance.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, the mayor has a discretion to allow public comment on these. And I
I
felt
just didn't
since,
know if you had to vote to go out of public comments, but it wasn't a hearing, so.
okay. Now we have both a motion to approve and a second. This is a roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And
Thank
on
you.
that, Mayor, I'm gonna have to bow out.
Yeah, send our condolences. Obviously a tough situation. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, consideration of resolution 20-29. This is reapproving an interlocal cooperative agreement on the distribution of CARES Acts funding between Roy City and Weber County and various Weber County cities with the delegation to section 10. Matt, do you want to talk to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and City Council, we present to you Resolution 20-29. As you all know, we had that special City Council meeting last Monday, adopting an interlocal agreement, as the mayor stated before. There were some other cities concerned about Section 10 here. It's in paragraph 10, Section 2. The intent of this interlocal agreement was to help our businesses here in Roy and the surrounding areas in Weber County for those that participate in this interlocal agreement. In the paragraph 10, it talks about, although good things, but it talks about helping those individuals that have been furloughed or laid off or significantly impacted because of COVID-19. Although these are good things and would be good things, the intention of this interlocal agreement is to help businesses only. So it was indicated through Weber County that we were wanting to strike this paragraph out. And so this is the way Weber County adopted their resolution in order for Roy City to comply. This is just kind of clerical to come up to the standards to adopt the same agreement. So anyway, we would recommend that you adopt this agreement as written.
you,
Matt,
Matt.
can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that in phase 2 and maybe possibly phase 3, that may go to nonprofits and it may go to different, I mean, it may be enlarged, but currently it's for small businesses or local businesses. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's mainly for local and small businesses right now. In the future, that could be discussed. Yes, you're correct. They want to see what happens with this, and then those discussions haven't happened yet. But this could be a future indication of what will happen.
Okay.
Other comments, questions for Matt on this particular resolution? Okay, hearing none then, do I have a motion then to, Andy? I got a question for you before we take this. Help me with this one. The last resolution that we passed, we had 5 council members. We now have 4 council members. Is there going to be an issue?
No, because we're not doing well, there won't be an issue. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Okay. What happened, the county wanted us to proceed this way. Sometimes you could just amend what you had prior. Their preference wasn't to do it that way. So
Brian Saxon sits there and drinking his
they wanted to reapprove it with this section being taken out. So that's what we're doing. So it's in essence the same agreement you already approved, just deleting one section on it. So I think this is a good way to handle it.
Okay. I just want to clarify that because there is a provision within the law that says that in order to overturn one particular ordinance, you have to have as equal number of council members as it was when it was approved. This is not necessarily overturning, it's just amending a chapter or verse in that. Is that
right? If we were doing a motion to reconsider, that would be the case.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good information. Okay, then, do I have a motion then to approve resolution 20-29, interlocal cooperative agreement with distribution of CARES Act funds between Roy City and Weber County?
So moved.
And thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Brian, thank you. This is a roll call vote. Morgan? Take your mic off, Morgan. Morgan, there
I
you go.
got a notice that said if I hit my space bar, it would take me off mute, but it didn't. So
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I just comment on that as well? I'm sorry, Mayor, but I thought it was very well received that we spent the extra time to go to our local businesses and share with them that information. I thought it was very well received by our businesses and appreciated that at least we reached out to them. Now, whether or not they apply, I don't know, but at least they had the information.
Yeah, great comment. First thing is I'll indicate to you, some of the businesses were shocked. Very appreciative that I don't know of any city, to be honest with you, where council members and the mayor were walking the streets distributing those flyers. So well done. It was well received. I think that's an understatement. What I got from businesses, they were quite surprised that we took the time to make sure that they got notifications. So well done. It really made a difference.
I agree. I found out there are some businesses I didn't even know existed in Roy.
Yeah.
And everyone I talked to was very appreciative and grateful.
Yeah, well done. Thank you. Thanks, Jan, for bringing that up. That's a great comment. Okay, this is public comment period. This is opportunity for anybody to offer any input on any topic. Morgan, is there anybody out there who would like to make public comments?
No, Mayor, I did not receive any requests for public comment other than Mr. Homer for the last agenda item.
Okay, thank you. Council, there is no presentations, but we do have 2 discussion items. So if you like, let's go ahead and we'll start with the first one. Discussion item is off-street parking. You've probably seen that I sent you a point paper that dealt with Roy City Ordinance Title 10, Chapter 19. As you may or may not have read through that, it just basically indicated that we do have an ordinance that indicates that an individual who's going to put, who's going to typically cut curb to gain access to parking, usually on their property, there's a requirement they have a 4.5 feet space between the property line and where that cut curb will be for them to go ahead and do that legally. What we have found, as you go through the city, you may have noticed it in your part of the city, we have a number of residents that do not have that. The curb has been cut literally on the property line. In some cases, I think by the visuals I showed you, actually on the other person's property line. And so this discussion is to kind of decide what we want to do in terms of moving forward with that. So with that, let me just make one last comment before we open up to any comments. This particular portion of the ordinance was changed on 7 March 2017. If you go back and look at the prior to that, which would be typically, and I have some records since I was on the Planning Commission of the 2016, this particular requirement for a 4.5 foot cut or 4.5 distance from the property line until you see the cut curb was not included. That would account for reason why when you go through the city, you'll see a lot of residents who have that cut up to the property line, but more than likely they would have been what they call legal non-conforming. It was perfectly legal at the time they did it. And now because the ordinance was changed, it's now non-conforming, but still legal. And so that's what you'll see. If you look at some of the pictures I've shown you, what makes this one kind of interesting is the fact is if you look over on the particular street, and I showed you some pictures, and some of you may have actually went to 4575 South, you will see that a lot of those, many of those, actually were cut at the property line, or in some cases, actually on the neighbor's property line. It looks attractive. Personally, in my opinion, it's actually the best I've seen.
Started reading it.
They look great, okay? But they were done about 2 years ago, and they are in violation of this ordinance. So we need to basically kind of decide what we'd like to do. Comments, questions, council, relative to ordinance Title 10, Chapter 19?
I was just wondering if you could clarify, that was my biggest question, was kind of what you started talking about, was why it was felt so imperative to change that at that 2017 meeting at that point, and then, you know, what's changed since then. And
Yeah, I can only speak for myself because I happened to be there at the time, but let me share with you what I do know. This particular portion of the ordinance was incorporated into about a 26-page changes that took place in the ordinances. This was a result of Irma. We had, I think, their legal authority came to give us a briefing sometime, I think, in 2016, if I remember right. He made a convincing argument that simply says that we needed to get our ordinances changed to get the city councils out of the decision-making process on some of these things, in large part because, let me be blunt with you, council, we sometimes as council members will make decisions oftentimes on political and not necessarily whether it's consistent. Maybe that's the best way I'll put it. It may be politically beneficial because it's the time of a year coming up on an election year, rather than whether or not we were same thing, made the same decision for someone else in a previous year, given the same circumstances. That has created some significant legal battles in terms of cities have been sued. And so Irma at the time made a compelling argument that simply says, take some of these ordinance issues out of the council's decision process, give them to the planning. So there were 26 pages of changes that went into our ordinances, typically in Title 10. And in the body of that 26 pages, there was two interesting ones. One was the issue that dealt with the fence height in terms of the setback. That was in there, and we addressed that with that assisted living facility and this particular one. It really didn't have anything to do with what Irma was in fact discussing, but it was definitely something that they felt at the time they probably needed to address as they dealt with that. Personally, I will indicate to you, either as a council member or as mayor, we may not have noticed that because we were addressing a whole lot of other issues in the 26-page change. And so all I can tell you right now, Dan, is this. Prior to 7th of March, 2017, there wasn't provision, anything that I can find that indicated there was a need for a 4.5-foot distance from the property line to this curb cut. But after that ordinance was approved on on March 7th, 2017, it's now ordinance, it's now statute, and we have been abiding by that. Now, that's what I know. What I think Matt might be able to help us with is we do have some outstanding tickets, fix-it tickets, okay, in our residents that maybe he can share with you us that we basically need to consider in this conversation. Matt?
Yeah, there, as you know, our code enforcement officer goes around and looks for violations. A lot of the time the violations come in because of a complaint. Actually, most of them come in through complaints, and then he goes out and investigates that. This ordinance is very difficult to investigate because in 2000, you have to identify that in 2017, this changed. So anything before that was, as the mayor stated, kind of grandfathered in or non-conforming. So there is a couple outstanding that these have been issued that we could put a moratorium or something on delaying them fixing it or something, why this is potentially being reviewed by the planning commission and back through council, if that's what you suggest. But yeah, there's just a couple of them, not a tremendous amount, maybe about 4 is what we know of.
So what I'm hearing, Matt, is that if that construction happened prior to that date when that was changed, it is legal non-conforming. So it'd have to be investigated and determined if it was already there at that time, then we don't enforce that. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Technically speaking, it's a feeless permit that they should apply for. So if they did it correct prior to 2017, we would have had a permit on file and it becomes very easy. But this is an issue that a lot of people don't understand, that it's a feeless permit, that they just do it themselves. And then it becomes much more difficult because then you're looking at Google Maps and changing the dates on those Google Maps to try to see when they poured that concrete. And as you know, we have a lot of residents and a lot of these issues. So yeah.
And remember, they can actually cut the curb. And by the way, they need to have a curb cutting permit. That we're not changing that. We think that any time that, and in some cases, if they did cut the curb, we need to tell them, need to go back and get a permit.
The main intent for those permits is because we need to go out there and that curb is technically city property, and the sidewalk, they're oftentimes changing or altering that sidewalk there, that we need to make sure it's done right if we're going to have to fix it in the future, if there's problems, if there's settlements. We have to make sure the compaction, the cement, everything is correct on that. So we're not fixing it in 10 years for the individuals.
Yeah. So this comes down to really 2 things, and council, just kind of get your thoughts on what we need to do here. The city did in fact pour that sidewalk on both sides on 4975 and inadvertently violated the current ordinance. I don't know what the cost would be to go back and fix that particular area or other areas within the city. The other issue would be is, do they need to? I suggest to you is, would you consider pushing this back to the Planning Commission to have them revisit this particular ordinance? Let the Planning Commission then assess its value. If in fact the Planning Commission can come back to the council over the next few months with a recommendation, whether or not we simply take this, continue the ordinance as is, and allow the council to make the final decision, or they may come back with a recommendation to remove it from the ordinance and allow the council to consider that option as well. If the council at that time believes that it's in the best interest to leave it as is, then we simply at that time ask then that the council direct the city to go back and fix all of those areas that in fact the city had basically inadvertently done in violation. If the council decides that it's probably not that relevant and decides to remove it, then we do not have to change that, nor do we have to address this enforcement issue on the citizens of Roy.
Mayor, I have one question too, that how will we proceed when applications come in now? Let's say an application comes in next week.
Yeah.
Because if we tell them, hey, we got to tell them one way or another what to do, because they're going to want to take some kind of action and not wait a few months down the road. So
I know.
You
To
know,
me,
we
I
say, hey, you got to comply with this and you got to keep the 4.5 feet. But it puts us in an awkward spot because we can't tell them,
I know.
go ahead and you can put it right on the line.
I know.
There's a practical complication here that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing, Andy. We can't ask them to violate the very sitting ordinance, but by the same token, in my opinion, is that they may have a need to have something done in a short period of time. And so I say they have to be held to the, in my opinion, you have to be held to the current ordinance.
I agree.
But at least if the council determines at a later date to change the ordinance, then in essence is that then there's no violation.
Right. And they could come back and cut it later if they wanted to be closer.
They wanted to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Tell them it's under review, right? We can say, you know, as of now, this is the ordinance, but it is under review.
Correct.
So you can either choose to wait or you can choose to comply.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also, as we are talking about things, was trying to explore what the positive benefits were, you know.
Diane, I could address that if.
Okay.
What I think they were trying to do is sometimes you see, let's say if two neighbors put both of their approaches and curb cut right next to each other, then you have this giant space of concrete where we'll limit how much concrete you can have in your front yard. But I think it's just an aesthetics issue. Some people wouldn't like someone's driveway right on their property line and their approach. Then sometimes that's too much concrete together. They would make exceptions. I did some looking into this recently just to try to figure all of that out. And there are other cities that have the 4.5. There's even some cities back east that have a 5.5 foot, but they all make exceptions when you're in a cul-de-sac because it's so difficult with the circle part. So I think that's the reasoning. So for what that's worth, it's mostly aesthetics.
Well, I think we now have a population with a little more discretionary income than they had in years past, and aesthetics are certainly nice and part of it, but maybe the lifestyle that they're probably hoping to facilitate by having that cut may be more important. And probably at this day and age, people wouldn't even notice it. Apparently we didn't notice it. So I'm not sure that importance holds the same level as it may have a few years ago.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier to back in if you have RVs or other vehicles to, if you can go farther with that. But I do see it all around too, where they have that and they have that side, you know, how you can get up to the side of the house, but you don't have that direct approach.
Right.
Can I talk on this subject a little bit as well, as far as a public works standpoint?
Please, Brandon, go ahead.
So I prefer the curb cut versus the people trying to back their RV up over the curb because, I mean, and we could break curbs, and then also it eliminates the fact of having 2x4s or any of that out in the curb and gutter that will restrict the water when we have storms or snowplow or any type of reasons. So I'm for the curb cuts.
Yeah, thanks for the input. That's good information, no, Brandon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, here's what we just need. It's a discussion item. We're obviously not voting on that, but if you believe the consensus are that we can, that you're willing, we can go ahead and task the planning commission to take another look at it and come back with a recommendation to the council when they're prepared to do so. Do you have any problems with that approach? Okay, everybody feels comfortable with that?
That's fine. Forward.
Okay, Matt, we'll go ahead and work this out with Andy, but we'll go ahead and ask the planning commission, take another review at it. And we would ask you then, is council, you okay just to put a hold on any pending actions at this moment? Because we at least have 4 until the council is able to make a final decision. You okay with that? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and Matt work out a strategy with Andy and get this to the planning commission for review. Thank you. But we have another one that deals with a no solicitation policy. I apologize. I remember when we first talked about this, and we did have different council members at the time. This issue came back, I believe, in August of last year. And one of the things that's been worked through is being talked about seeing if in fact our position on enhancing our non-solicitation policy. I sent to you, because I'm not sure if you still have a copy of that, just a little background on that. In that little point paper I sent you, I did not direct an answer. What I told you is where we got here, here's the information on it, and some of the recommendations that were provided in that request using Layton City as well as Syracuse City and their solicitation ordinances. That's kind of where we are. It's a discussion item. Council, do you have any comments or thoughts on this?
I liked the second point that you had that talked about by focusing on the ordinance of the solicitation of selling products, because I do think that there are many other times where, in fact, as people go along, they're thinking in their mind, a lot of people, solicitation means we're trying to sell you something. And so then it starts getting very confusing, and not everybody is looking at the definition, the true definition. And I thought that that was a very appropriate way to do it, because I believe that that's the most concerning, and that would allow other beneficial reasons to come and speak with someone.
Yeah, particularly I use the example, Matt, you and I were asked to join the Air Force to go around and as an advocate, knock on some doors. Our purpose was to inform people about the chemical plume that's under the city. We're surely not trying to sell anything, but those people, by that information, really needed to understand what their options were, and we asked them if they would consider contacting the Air Force. It was not a solicitation to sell, but it was definitely an advocate in terms of trying to convince them that they need to consider it. I wonder, from a legal perspective, whether or not we could do that if, in fact, if the no solicitation ordinance was so strict that if in fact I couldn't even knock on the door. And the reason why I say no solicitation versus no trespassing, I think there's a fundamental difference. If a person puts a no trespassing sign on their property, then I can't enter that property. But I think, in my opinion, if in fact there's a no solicitation, I should not enter that property if I'm trying to sell something, as you're suggesting, Diane. But if I need to ask them some questions or I need to talk to them about something, I should not be restricted because there's a no solicitation sign from asking. As long as I'm not trying to peddle, not trying to sell something to that resident who has a non-solicitation. Now that's a fine line, I'll tell you. And Andy, you'll have to help us if we pursue this any further, because I believe most people's perception is, or understanding is, solicitation is a selling issue and not necessarily a visit issue.
Yeah, and it's really an interesting topic, and it's quite complicated. I think in San Diego, they've got a pretty good beat on how to handle this too, because there comes issues with religious expression and other types of things. So it all comes into play, whether, you know, if you post no solicitation sign, the different things like that. So it's complicated. And again, I can get that as soon as you guys want it, but my preference really is to, I'm trying to do a comprehensive overhaul of our business licensing and our alcohol licensing, and I'd like to put it there. But if you look at like this council meeting, all the issues we had here, I can't really shove those aside. And
agreed.
And so I apologize if that isn't moving faster, but it's just whatever you'd prefer. So I'm hoping this working at home has been excellent. I'm able to do a lot more, and that's one of my goals, is to knock that out. So, but I'll tell you, it's a while. And if you look at just the ordinance that we did with the council meetings in electronic, I probably put about 50 hours on that. I was keeping track of how much time, and it only shows up as 3 different pages. But in addition to looking at the state statute and that, there's research that goes along with it, and then the drafts and redrafts, and there were several of those. So I don't think the solicitation would take all that long, but it's just a matter of how I prioritize that. So I'll go forward however you'd like, but I understand your concerns, and I'm making sure that we address all of those.
Okay, Andy, thank you. Council, you okay with them with just having work at his pace? And then once he's prepared to present something to us, then we'll review it then.
Yeah, sure. I wanted you to, I just did a poll. I talked to several people what they thought no solicitation meant. And it's exactly what you said, Mayor. They thought that meant selling a product. And so that's my little mini, non-double blind, it wasn't a double blind study or anything, but it was just the little information I have. That's every person, that's what they said.
Yep, that makes sense too. That's how I believe it. Thank you.
Well,
Other
so
thoughts?
don't they have to have a permit to sell anyway? Like
They
I was
do.
talking to Matt about it, so they normally have a tag on them or something that gives them a permit to come around and sell. I know I have a older neighbor, and she's bought some $5,000 vacuum from some person that I mean, they target those older people and can sell them anything. And so I worry about people going around soliciting things that don't have a permit. So you shouldn't let them in your house, obviously, or talk to them. They have to legally have a permit, right?
Yes, and I think with some of those ordinances that I've seen, you can make them show that to you before they come up. So, but honestly, it's been quite a while since I looked at that. And we probably all dealt with, I can't tell you how many people knocked on my door to provide lawn services, fertilizer, lawn mowing. You probably all went through that this spring and early summer.
But I think the whole key here is that in this proposal, this idea, it's a little vague in the current ordinance.
Yes.
What this will do is it'll put a little teeth into the ordinance. Now remember, the ordinance still says if the resident says, leave me alone, they're required under the ordinance today to walk off and leave them alone. But we've had witnesses where there has been some sellers who have been, it's almost like you have to throw them off the deck to get them out of that selling posture. And so this would just provide a little more teeth to protect the resident, that if they basically do not want someone to solicit their property, it gives them the teeth to do that. And the ordinance will then support that. So if I heard you right, then we'll let Andy go ahead and finish his work on it. And then you're okay. We'll wait for him to, when he has that done, to send it to us, and we'll do a review then. You okay with that?
Yes, no time
Yes.
rush, no push.
No time pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, Andy, you okay with that, Matt?
I am.
Okay, thank you for input. Let's go ahead and those are the 2 discussion items. City manager report.
Yep, just a couple of things for you. As you guys know, the application process is open with weavercares.com. for the Roy City businesses and Weber County businesses to apply for these grants that we adopted tonight. Talking to Weber County this morning, they had 130 people submit last night. That's not just for Roy, that's for Weber County. Talking to people that has gone through the process, there's some things required. So I think today, once they found out what the requirement was, I'm thinking today there was quite a few more businesses that that did apply today. I can check on that for you though. We were asked possibly to have an employee go up there, to allocate an employee or two to go up there. Talking to them today, they do have the employees that are needed, but knowing that this is going to be very time consuming, they will reach out to us at a future date to let us know if they do need those employees. So we have a couple of them identified in the city that we can allocate if needed. Just wanted to let you know, obviously tonight was a UDOT public hearing for the 5600 corridor. This was an online public hearing. Speaking to UDOT, it was more of a presentation in that you could submit comment through online. Tomorrow night, they're doing another public hearing from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock at Royal Elementary School. This will be in person. They're trying to get as many public comments electronically. And so they don't want a whole lot of people, but you are welcome to go out and support the 5600 environmental impact study tomorrow night. The later sessions will probably be a little bit better. They usually, the 5 o'clock session is a little bit, he says previously with the UDOT studies, 5 o'clock's the busiest session. As the time goes on, it gets less busy. So anyway, that's all I have for tonight. So.
Good rundown, Matt. I will indicate to you the WACOG, the mayors were told that we will get a weekly update on how many CARES Acts businesses within our cities were filed.
Perfect.
We won't have the details, but they'll provide that as soon as I get that information, or as soon as you get that information. Let's share it with the council, kind of give us an idea of whether or not any of those 176 that were priority ones are filing and hopefully will be considered. Okay, thank you. Good rundown. By the way, the comment period for UDOT environmental assessment study to make comments on that have already started. It opened up on June 23rd. It will close on July 23rd. It's a 30-day time. And so if you talk to people, even yourself, if you have a comment on that study, questions you want to ask, you can go online and you can actually submit your comments to them up until the 23rd of July. Okay. Council, any other comments you'd like to bring up?
I have a comment in regards to Matt and the mayor. That position from Roy City that is or was going to be allowed to review the applications. Is there any concern that we need that representation from Roy? Because we do have the highest number of citizens that, you know, was how the money was distributed, different in businesses. Is that representation important for us to be able to get our fair share? Is that something we need to worry about? That's one. I'll let you answer that and then I'll ask my second.
Yeah, I can only indicate to you it was a concern for me. I felt like that. I have talked with the county. They're very open, very receptive. They feel like that it's going to be based on a kind of a screening process that they developed. I, for one, be honest with you, would feel more comfortable if there was at least one representative. It's a 8-hour day, 2-week assignment. So Matt would have to get somebody to do that. But by the same token is I wouldn't want to have that person, we'd end up paying for that. I don't want that person just standing around waiting for something to do down there. And so I asked Matt if he would call Holland specifically. He did. Holland says, hey, they think they may have the resources, but I'm hoping at this point, personally, I'm hoping Matt does get a call and that we can at least provide one person at the opportunity to support itself.
Yeah, I would agree with Diane that it's not about whether they have the manpower, but that we have the appropriate representation.
Yeah, if that's a concern, I can definitely call Holland back and just say this is something that we would like to do and that we would like to have that representation there. I'm sure they're open to it. So if that's the way we want to move, we can do that.
Well, I'd like to know the feedback following it. I mean, if we see that we're not equally represented, how did they justify that?
Right.
I mean, if it doesn't have to be the same person every time, I mean, I don't know. I'm happy to volunteer to go, you know, some of the days or something like that. But you just know I'm ready to jump in that if it would be helpful, you know, depending on what that criteria would be.
So is it like a first come, first serve, or they just take all the applicants and then up to that day, the 13th or whatever, and they'll go through and figure it out on their own?
Well, there's some guidelines they've made in terms of this. The only piece I wasn't able to make a distinction on, Ann, is the allocation is anywhere from 2,000 to 35,000. And so it was not clear to me of how they make a distinction, whether it's 2,000 or 17,000 or 35,000. But to screen, they definitely got it down to first priority. And I'll share this with you. If the business was shut down, and there were a lot of them, 176 of them in Roy, that were shut down based on the health department decree that says you can't have a barber shop, you can't have these kind of functions.
Right.
Then they were top priority. They were number one priority on that list. And then there was a priority 2 list, and then there was a priority 3 list, and they articulated pretty clearly how they make that distinction.
Right.
I will indicate to you, my biggest concern is that our businesses don't apply. They may find it too cumbersome. They may say, I just don't want to do this. I don't know, but I think, you know, we tried to convince them. I talked to them, and I think you did too. This is a real good opportunity. Please, please, please apply for this and at least be considered. But under the first way, that based on your comment, it is based on priority. The first ones that are set aside, when the money is gone, then it's gone for that group. Then we have to wait for the funding for the second phase, but we've got to get through the first phase first.
Well, I know that you have to scan in and send documents and things, and there's probably some of them businesses that don't have that capability to scan and email. So let's hoping that they look for help, because, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what the legal ramifications are, but as far as I'm concerned, and those businesses and our residents in Roy paid for our copy machine and paid for our scanners. If they want to make arrangements with Matt and say, can I come over and maybe use the equipment? They paid for it. I wouldn't have a problem as long as it doesn't interfere with city business to use the resources we have available so they can apply. Wouldn't bother me one bit.
Right. Well, I sure hope that they reach out, because the ones that I went to said some of them are close to shutting down. So.
And I heard some that basically told me they do not believe they will be able to reopen. The damage is that significant, and that bothers me, because these were good businesses going in, and they didn't cause this. And to be honest with you, they don't even think they'll be able to reopen, and that bothers me. Okay, other comments, concerns on that topic?
I was just going to talk about the COVID updates that we kind of briefly talked about.
Please.
If there are other places that the graph can be shared, like on some of the different Facebook, let's do it. The mayor has over and over discussed the importance of the caution that must be shown by our citizens. The numbers aren't looking good. It's almost certain that it's going to create a second spike and maybe even a third. I was just on a web conference today. Things aren't looking good. We can go on and on about that, but we just need to do whatever we can to encourage our citizens. That little diagram shows how important it is that if both people are wearing the mask, your rate goes way down. And we just need to remind people it's not about them, it's about other people. It's about our community. It's about the elderly, and we just want them to have that community feel and really work together as a community to decrease those numbers. Thank you.
Yeah, great comment, Diane. And I think Diane's comment would be to you, Council. Would you consider your own Facebook? Would you consider your own Twitter? Whatever sources you have, if Diane was to give that to us, would you consider using your own feeds and send that out, okay, so we can get as many people aware of what Diane's putting together. She's actually added and enhanced the information that we have and provided a lot of good detail in there that's very, very helpful. The secret is sharing that out. And we can only go so far with the Roy City website. We can only go so far with the Roy City Facebook. But we may be able to stretch out a little further if you'd be willing to go ahead and take her documents and push them out to your contacts as well.
I'll tell you what, I'll just email them to everyone, then you've got it, and then it will work out. So
Perfect.
whatever works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for the information, Diane.
Anything else, council?
I just want to know when 5600 is going to be finished. Are they about done with that? It's such a mess.
Brandon?
Yeah, to be kind of the bearer of bad news, it's gonna drag on into next year. It's a 2-year project, so
Well, so replacing that sewer line?
yeah.
Oh,
So
and
they're
so 2500 is going to be closed for a really long time.
2,500
22.
hopefully will be opened up once they can get that. They got to go back in and relay the secondary line. That's why they haven't paved the section going across 5,600. So once that gets done, I imagine we can open up 2,500. But yeah, I think they're scheduled to work until October, and then the weather will shut them down, and then yeah, they'll be back in it next year.
And then 2200, what about that? They're taking away all my shortcuts to get everywhere.
Yeah, so it just kind of depends on how long. I know right through that section, they're gonna have to cut our water line out of the way. So yeah, it's probably gonna be a little while for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, two things. Both on the good news ledger. One, Intermountain Roy Clinic, the Herefordshire portion of that project is now being demolished.
Yeah.
And so the new building, the new clinic is in use. And then what they'll do is they'll landscape that area where the old Herefordshire stood.
Right.
So anyway, if you haven't been down there, they're going to town on that building. And then I would just like to throw out kudos to Mayor Dandoy, who is a grandpa again.
Again, yeah.
He's got a little granddaughter.
Daughter, yeah.
Anyway, and I would just like to congratulate him.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wish my son was here to welcome her home.
Right.
But
I bet.
it's
Well-
a good thing.
Well, he's the one that sent her down. That's the way you have to look at it.
That's
You
how I
got
look
to
at
see
it.
her first. So
That's right.
how much did she weigh?
At least a pound. I think it's around 6, but I don't pay attention
I'm
to
like,
that.
you don't, I guess I'm wrong. You don't ask a man when the anniversary is and how much their kids weigh.
Yeah, don't have a clue.
6 pounds.
She's fine.
But she's doing great, and mom's doing great. They're home now, and we're excited to have that homecoming.
Well, I'm excited. That'll bring some happiness to that family.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So thank you. Well, council, great meeting. We got a lot accomplished. Matt, anything else we want to share?
Nope, I think I'm good.
Perfect. Council, thank you for everything. We got some good business done. Do I have a motion then to adjourn?
So moved.
Jan, thank you. Do I have a second? Diane, thank you. All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you. And thanks for the help, Morgan. Thank you for all you do. Obviously, another great meeting. You did great. And staff, you're always been very supportive. You guys do some wonderful things. We just don't tell you all enough of how much you do for us, but thank you. And Matt, a great effort. Thank you for keeping us on track here. You guys have a good day and be safe.
hey, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
See you later. Bye-bye.